on it. So if you want to turn to that, you're doing that.
So do you want us to show the screen, or do you already have the paper ready for, do you want to share your own screen?
No, I'm just using a book. See, it's one of these old-fashioned things.
Okay. Do you want me to put the text there, or?
I'm not, well, will people need that? I guess if people don't have a book, they might want to see it on text, but I don't.
I have no idea. Chris, what do you think?
So about 8 hours ago or so, when we maybe had more English as a second or third language audience, I don't know what our audience is like right now, they were actually asking for more text on screen so that they could better understand what people were talking. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, Antonio, if you could bring it up.
Okay. My name is Jay Peregrine, and I've been reading the Urantia books since 1974. And I worked at the Urantia Foundation for many years, along with Chris and a few other people here. So now I'm retired, and I live in a small town on Lake Michigan in the state of Michigan, but we're right on the lake here. So it snowed yesterday. Did you get snow, Chris?
Yes.
But it's spring snow. It'll melt pretty soon.
Okay, I will share the protocol. I just will show it on screen, and then people can read it themselves, and then we are ready to start. You already did your own introduction, Jay, so
I guess we won't spend time for everyone introducing themselves since it's 80 people or something. But normally that's a nice thing to be able to do. Also, I realize this might be a sort of an advanced study group, but if there's people there that don't know what we're talking about, I guess we'll use the protocol, and I'll let the host decide when it's time to begin. Mute yourself if you're not speaking. Please use chat. How do people raise their hands? Maybe I just need to, I tell you what we'll do. This is how we do it. Did it in Chicago. Is we'll read a whole section, and then we will discuss it. And who's going to read? Can we take turns, or should I just do the reading? What have you guys been doing?
I like Chris doing that, selecting the people who can read and who want to read. In this case, I just want to mention that, again, if you don't want your picture used for our videos, please turn off your video footage, and then we will not use it, of course. And you can also change your name. So if you don't like your name in the screen now because it's too personal, you can put whatever you think is necessary there. And I think we are ready to go. So, Jay, it's up to you. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and then Chris, if you can show paper 114.
Here we go. And because I'm sharing my screen, I don't see people. So Jay, you can decide who reads or doesn't.
From 80 people, I can only see one screen. So, Andre got his hand up. You want to start? We can't. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
All right.
And let me just.
Can you just change the title of
114
the presentation? Can you just say is Seraphim? No, that's correct.
Yes, this is paper 114, Seraphic
Right.
Planetary Government.
Okay.
The Most Highs rule in the kingdoms of men through many celestial forces and agencies, but chiefly through the ministry of Seraphim. At noon today, the roll call of planetary angels, guardians, and others on Urantia was 501,234,619 pairs of Seraphim. There were assigned to my command 200 seraphic hosts, 597,196,800 pairs of Seraphim, or 1,194,393,600 individual angels. The registry, however, shows 1,2,469,238 individuals. It follows, therefore, that 191,924,362 angels were absent from this world on transport, messenger, and death duty. On Urantia, there are about the same number of cherubim as seraphim, and they are similarly organized. Seraphim and their associated cherubim have much to do with the details of the superhuman government of a planet, especially of worlds which have been isolated by rebellion. The angels, ably assisted by the midwayers, function on Urantia as the actual supramaterial ministers who execute the mandates of the resident governor general and all his associates and subordinates. Seraphim, as a class, are occupied with many assignments other than those of personal and group guardianship. Urantia is not without proper and effective supervision from the system, constellation, and universe rulers, but the planetary government is unlike that of any other world in the Satania system, even in all Nebadon. This uniqueness in your plan of supervision is due to a number of unusual circumstances. 1, the life modification status of Urantia. 2, the exigencies of the Lucifer rebellion. 3, the disruptions of the Adamic default. 4, the irregularities growing out of the fact that Urantia was one of the bestowal worlds of the universe sovereign. Michael of Nebadon is the planetary prince of Urantia. 5, the special function of the 24 planetary directors. 6, the location on the planet of an archangel circuit. 7, the more recent designation of the one-time incarnated Macaventa Melchizedek as vicegerent planetary prince.
So, I got it. Yeah, I'm not. Are there any questions or comments? I'm not sure how we do this either, Chris. Just speak up, but not all at once. Anyone's hand up? I don't see hands either. I think I will make a comment then that one of the reasons I was drawn to this paper, and I do also have quotes from other papers if we get to it, if we want to go to other places, particularly if people have questions about the seraphim and their nature. They're mentioned in several other papers. But in this time of world emergency, people may be wondering, how will this be handled? And I believe, well, this paper helps to show how the seraphim work with people on this planet, and it's largely through the ministry of the seraphim that the Most High's rule in the realms of men, and so therefore that this kind of emergency can be handled. So I would just say, rest assured that it's being handled. How, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, but there's some clues here in this paper as to what the techniques are, and so you can imagine, maybe even take part in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's no more questions, we could go to section 1. Oh, Andres has a question. Go ahead.
It's not so much a question, but just maybe something as a thought provocation. What's interesting to note is that in 1934 and 1935, the human population on Urantia was approximately 2 billion, exactly, about 2 to 2.1 billion. We are now at 7.63 billion people on this planet. What's interesting to speculate for people, and it's something that we can't come up with a definite answer, but it's interesting to speculate to what extent has the seraphic ministry increased its number of ministers to deal with that increase in population. It's not a 1-for-1 kind of thing. It was approximately 1-for-2 then, but we know that many people have group guardians. So I just put that out there as a thought for people to think about.
We we do have two questions. Well, one from Rick and Susan, and I think Luis Garcia Borri also raised his hand.
It was for, oh, Rick and Susan. Oh, you can raise your hand.
Yes,
Good
I think.
idea.
Yeah, that is better. That everyone just click raise their hand, because that's easier for us all to.
Okay. So Rick.
Hi, Jay. This is Rick.
Hi.
Susan's here too.
Oh, hi, Susan.
We just raised our hand, offering to read whenever you need somebody to read for you.
Okay.
Good.
Is there a comment then?
I think Luis, he also raised his hand before, but he already lowered it. No, it's
I raised it for the same reason. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Luis. How are you?
Good to see you. Well, let me turn on my camera so you can see me too.
So you want to read? Is that it?
Yeah, but Rick can go ahead and I can.
Okay. So Rick, do you want to go? Do you want to start with section 1?
Section 1, okay. All right, the sovereignty of Urantia. The original sovereignty of Urantia was held in trust by the sovereign of the Satania system. It was first delegated by him to a joint commission of Melchizedeks and life carriers, and this group functioned on Urantia until the arrival of a regularly constituted planetary prince. Subsequent to the downfall of the Prince Caligastia, at the time of the Lucifer Rebellion, Urantia had no sure settled relationship with the local universe and its administrative divisions until the completion of Michael's bestowal in the flesh, when he was proclaimed by the Union of Days planetary prince of Urantia. Such a proclamation in surety and in principle forever settled the status of your world, but in practice the sovereign creator son made no gesture of personal administration of the planet, aside from the establishment of the Jerusalem Commission of 24 former Urantians with authority to represent him in the government of Urantia and all other quarantined planets in the system. One of this council is now always resident on Urantia as a resident governor general. Vicegerent authority to act for Michael as planetary prince has been recently vested in Macaventa Melchizedek, but this son of the local universe has made not the slightest move toward modifying the present planetary regime of the successive administrations of the resident governors general. There is a little likelihood that any marked change will be made in the government of Urantia during the present dispensation, unless the vicegerent planetary prince should arrive to assume his titular responsibilities. It appears to certain of our associates that at some time in the near future, the plan of sending one of the 24 counselors to Urantia to act as Governor General will be superseded by the formal arrival of Macaventa Melchizedek with the vicegerent mandate of the sovereignty of Urantia. As acting planetary prince, he would undoubtedly continue in charge of the planet until the final adjudication of the Lucifer Rebellion, and probably on into the distant future of planetary settlement and light and life. Some believe that Macaventa will not come to take personal direction of Urantian affairs until the end of the current dispensation. Others hold that the vicegerent prince may not come as such until Michael sometime returns to Urantia as he promised, when still in the flesh. Still others, including this narrator, look for Melchizedek's appearance any day or any hour, and we certainly hope it happens pretty soon.
Wait a minute, that wasn't there.
Oh, we're looking forward to that ourselves. So
That was your gloss on the text. Say while we're since we just read that, I don't know how you'll handle this, Chris, but I would like to turn to page. I'm using the book pages, so somebody can give the other. I don't know what it is. Anyways, but it's page 611 in the middle of the Lucifer Rebellion paper. So that's going to be that is going to be paper 53, section 9, paragraph 1, paragraph 3 and 4. This just sort of tags on to what we just read. And I want to make I think it makes an interesting point, which would, Luis, do you want to read that, Luis? Luis?
Okay, 5393.
Did you find it? It starts with Michael, upon assuming the supreme sovereignty of Nebadon. It's sort of set apart as.
Yeah, I can read that. Okay, I'm just getting to it. Michael, upon assuming the supreme sovereignty of Nebadon, petitioned the Ancients of Days for authority to intern all personalities concerned in the Lucifer Rebellion, pending the rulings of the super-universe tribunals in the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer. Placed on the records of the Uversa Supreme Court almost 200,000 years ago, as you reckon time. Concerning the System Capital Group, the Ancients of Days granted the Michael petition with but a single exception. Satan was allowed to make periodic visits to the apostate princes on the fallen worlds until another Son of God should be accepted by such apostate worlds, or until such time as the courts of Uversa should begin the adjudication of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer. Satan could come to Urantia because you had no son of standing in residence, neither planetary prince nor material son. Makivente Melchizedek has since been proclaimed vicegerent planetary prince of Urantia, and the opening of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer has signalized the inauguration of temporary planetary regimes on all the isolated worlds. It is true that Satan did periodically visit Caligastia and others of the fallen princes right up to the time of the presentation of these revelations, when there occurred the first hearing of Gabriel's plea for the annihilation of the arch-rebels. Satan is now unqualifiedly detained on the Jerusalem prison worlds.
So these two paragraphs are an example of something that happens throughout the Urantia papers, which is there's a main theme that they're talking about here, the present status of the rebellion. But in talking about it, they sprinkle some interesting information that isn't actually the main topic. But pulling that out, what I noticed is that the fallen, they say right up to the time of the presentation of these revelations. So Urantia book was presented, as they say, right essentially at the time of the opening of the case of Gabriel versus Lucifer. And also, they inaugurated temporary planetary regimes on all the isolated planets. And Makivente Melchizedek was proclaimed vicegerent planetary prince of Urantia. So I think from this paragraph and a couple of others, something that isn't really stated sort of like in one paper by itself is that there was this change in the temporary planetary regimes were inaugurated, and Makivente Melchizedek became planetary prince of Urantia. There's other parts of the book where we don't need to go into them now that talk about the ministry of the Melchizedeks, which is, they do a lot of remedial teaching, which Melchizedek did before Jesus arrived on, came to this planet. So I think that it's from this paragraph, and then going back to what we were reading on page 1251, that, so, when will Melchizedek come to take up actually be the vicegerent planetary prince? Well, the Melchizedeks are, in inaugurating temporary planetary regimes, they're anticipating the adjudication of the Lucifer rebellion. And so the Urantia book is, in that technical sense, their attempt on this planet to prepare for Melchizedek's return and for what comes next, whatever that is. And that's just important to understand that with all the other things in the Urantia book that you can get out of it and where it can help people in their lives, that this is a, I don't know what the right word is, but it's there's a specific purpose for this development of this remedial teaching effort by the Melchizedeks. That's my sermon. Anyone have comments?
Rick and Susan, they raised their hands again.
Okay.
Hi, Jay. It's Susan. I was just, after we read through section 2, and it mentioned that at some point, the normal rotation of the governors general might be superseded by Macventa taking over. I was wondering, do we all concur that the 24 elders were established at Pentecost? And
Yeah.
Can we expect that there might be another change at Pentecost in 2030, since 30 AD was when Jesus died and when that should have been established?
I would say the answer is yes. From it's not really written right here, but there's other, the way that the timing of the governor generals are, but I don't know. Nobody's told me anything.
So would you say that if we could say that the revelation came over, technically, would we say that had happened just after 1930, or when they tell us that it came over and they had just had a change?
I think they were concurrent. It happened, I don't know what the exact timing was, but I think that all of these things were happening around the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
Which would have been in it depends on how in the early 20th century, first, the books, the first 3 papers were indicted in 34, 35, but obviously there was a few years of working through that, so it would have been somewhere in there, probably.
Okay.
Now it's interesting that we're going to, it won't be too long before that's going to be 100 years ago, but that's a whole other topic. Maybe does somebody want to read?
I'd be willing to read for you if you want.
Okay. You want to
Okay.
start with section 2?
Sure, I can do that. Okay, section 2, the Board of Planetary Supervisors. Since the times of Michael's bestowal on your world, the general management of Urantia has been entrusted to a special group on Jerusalem of 24 one-time Urantians. Qualification for membership on this commission is unknown to us, but we have observed that those who have been thus commissioned have all been contributors to the enlarging sovereignty of the Supreme in the system of Satania. By nature, they were all real leaders when they functioned on Urantia, and accepting Macventa Melchizedek, these qualities of leadership have been further augmented by Mansion World experience and supplemented by the training of Jerusalem citizenship. Members are nominated to the 24 by the Cabinet of Lanaforge, seconded by the Most Highs of Edentia, approved by the assigned Sentinel of Jerusalem, and appointed by Gabriel of Salvington in accordance with the mandate of Michael. The temporary appointees function just as fully as do the permanent members of this commission of special supervisors. This board of planetary directors is especially concerned with the supervision of those activities on this world which result from the fact that Michael here experienced his terminal bestowal. They are kept in close and immediate touch with Michael by the liaison activities of a certain brilliant evening star, the identical being who attended upon Jesus throughout the mortal bestowal. At the present time, 1 John, known to you as the Baptist, is chairman of this council when it is in session on Jerusalem. But the ex officio head of this council is the assigned sentinel of Satania, the direct and personal representative of the Associate Inspector on Salvington and of the Supreme Executive of Orvonton. The members of this same commission of former Urantians also act as advisory supervisors of the 36 other rebellion isolated worlds of the system. They perform a very valuable service in keeping with the affairs of these planets, which still remain more or less under the over-control of the constellation fathers of Norlashadek. These 24 counselors make frequent trips as individuals to each of the quarantined planets, especially to Urantia. Each of the other isolated worlds is advised by similar and varying sized commissions of its one-time inhabitants. But these other commissions are subordinate to the Urantian group of 24. While the members of the latter commission are thus actively interested in every phase of human progress on each quarantined world in Satania, they are especially and particularly concerned with the welfare and advancement of the mortal races of Urantia, for they immediately and directly supervise the affairs of none of the planets except Urantia. And even here, their authority is not complete, excepting in certain domains concerned with mortal survival. No one knows how long these 24 Urantia counselors will continue in their present status, detached from the regular program of universe activities. They will no doubt continue to serve in their present capacities until some change in planetary status ensues, such as the end of a dispensation, the assumption of full authority by Macaventa Melchizedek, the final adjudication of the Lucifer Rebellion, or the reappearance of Michael on the world of his final bestowal. The present resident Governor General of Urantia seems inclined to the opinion that all but Macaventa may be released for paradise ascension the moment the system of Satania is restored to the constellation circuits. But other opinions are also current.
Andre made a comment in the chat. Andre, do you want to highlight?
Well, it just struck me how curious it is that our author, Manavenda Melchizedek, points out that it refers to the fact that Macaventa Melchizedek, as our vicegerent planetary prince, is the reason that Satan couldn't come and visit. What strikes me as odd there is, doesn't Michael of Nebadon outrank him? Why did they not mention that it's because Michael is the planetary prince? Why would they defer to the fact that the vicegerent planetary prince has been installed? It's a kind of a curious statement. Hasn't struck me as curious before, which is, as an aside, is the value of all study groups. You think about things that you never would think of all on your own.
Well, David. Oh, John Hale's raised his hand. I guess we go with John.
Yes. Well, we know that any program that a lesser being can function successfully in they delegate. The Father doesn't do everything. The Eternal Son doesn't do everything. If there's a created entity that they've created can do the job, they do the job. And I think it's as simple as that. I think it kind of goes beyond that too, is that if Melchizedek's the vicegerent, I think we can be fairly confident that he will incarnate here on this planet sometime in the future, and our ancestors can look forward to that.
John?
Yeah, am I correct in assuming that Satan was created by Michael? And if so, a parent usually doesn't, pass some sort of judgment on their child. So this is a sign to others to do.
Good point. I think it was Michael and the other spirit.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But I finally got that straight in my head that God doesn't execute his children. He leaves that to the Ancient of Days to determine those things.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, I realize we don't have that much time. I'm used to study groups being longer. So I was thinking let's skip the sections 3 and 4, although I would recommend, if you haven't read them, read through them, and go to try to read section 5 and 6 at least, and then so that we can discuss the Seraphim. Does somebody want to read? Do you put your hand up if you want to read? Does everyone know how to do that? Sherry, we have a volunteer. You have to unmute though. There you go. We don't hear you, Sherry.
Hear me now?
Yeah,
Section 5 or Section 6? Which do you want, Jay?
section 5. Maybe I'll do that.
5, the planetary government. The actual administration of Urantia is indeed difficult to describe. There exists no formal government along the lines of universe organization, such as separate legislative, executive, and judicial departments. The 24 counselors come to the nearest to being the legislative branch of the planetary government. The Governor General is a provisional and advisory chief executive with the veto power resident in the Most High Observer. And there are no absolutely authoritative judicial powers operative on the planet, only the conciliating commissions. A majority of the problems involving Seraphim and Midwayers are by mutual consent decided by the Governor General. But except when voicing the mandates of the 24 counselors, his rulings are all subject to appeal to conciliating commissions, to local authorities constituted for planetary function, or even to the system sovereign of Satania. The absence of the corporeal staff of a planetary prince and the material regime of an Adamic son and daughter is partially compensated by the special ministry of Seraphim and by the unusual services of the Midway creatures. The absence of the planetary prince is effectively compensated by the triune presence of the archangels, the Most High Observer, and the Governor General. This rather loosely organized and somewhat personally administered planetary government is more than expectedly effective because of the time-saving assistance of the archangels and their ever-ready circuit, which is so frequently utilized in planetary emergencies and administrative difficulties. Technically, the planet is still spiritually isolated in the Norlacia circuits, but in an emergency, this handicap can now be circumvented through utilization of the Archangel circuit. Planetary isolation is, of course, of little concern to individual mortals, since the pouring out of the Spirit of Truth upon all flesh 1900 years ago. Each administrative day on Urantia begins with a consultative conference, which is attended by the Governor General, the Planetary Chief of Archangels, Angels, the Most High Observer, the Supervising Seraphim, the Chief of Resident Life Carriers, and invited guests from among the high sons of the universe, or from among certain of the student visitors who may chance to be sojourning on the planet. The direct administrative cabinet of the Governor General consists of 12 Seraphim, the acting chiefs of the 12 groups of special angels functioning as the immediate superhuman directors of planetary progress and stability.
Any comments? Who wants? Jim Land, please correct the Spirit of Truth was not. Oh. Does, just in the interest of time, does somebody want to start reading the next section? And it's kind of long, so we could split it up if you wanted to, but anybody want to read that, start reading? Raise your hand now. Anybody raising their hand?
I can do that. It's Cecilia Lampley.
Okay.
The Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision. When the first Governor General arrived on Urantia, concurrent with the outpouring of the Spirit of Truth, he was accompanied by 12 corps of special Seraphim, seraphic guardians who were immediately assigned to certain special planetary services. These exalted angels are known as the Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision and are aside from the over control of the planetary Most High Observer under the immediate direction of the resident general, Governor General. These 12 groups of angels, while functioning under the general supervision of the resident Governor General, are immediately directed by the Seraphic Council of 12, the acting chiefs of each group. This council also serves as a volunteer cabinet of the resident Governor General. As planetary chief of Seraphim, I preside over this council of seraphic chiefs, and I am a volunteer Supernafen of the primary order serving on Urantia as the successor of the one-time chief of the angelic host of the planet who defaulted at the time of the Caligastia secession. The 12 corps of the Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision are functional on Urantia as follows. First, the epical angels. These are the angels of the current age, the dispensational group. These celestial ministers are entrusted with the oversight and direction of the affairs of each generation as they are designed to fit into the mosaic of the age in which they occur. The present corps of epical angels serving on Urantia is the third group assigned to the planet during the current dispensation. 2, the progress angels. These seraphim are entrusted with the task of initiating the evolutionary progress of the successive social ages. They foster the development of the inherent progressive trend of evolutionary creatures. They labor incessantly to make things what they ought to be. The group now on duty is the second to be assigned to the planet. Third, the religious angel or guardians. These are the angels of the churches, the earnest contenders for that which is and has been. They endeavor to maintain the ideals of that which has survived for the sake of the safe transit of moral values from one epoch to another. They are the checkmates of the angels of progress, all the while seeking to translate from one generation to another the imperishable values of the old and passing forms into the new, and therefore thus stabilized patterns of thought and conduct. These angels do contend for spiritual forms, but they are not the source of ultra-sectarianism and meaningless controversial divisions of professed religionists. The core now functioning on Urantia is the fifth thus to serve. 4, the angels of nation life. These are the angels of trumpets, directors of the political performances of Urantia national life. The group now functioning on the over-control of international relations is the 4th corps to serve on the planet. It's particularly through the ministry of this seraphic division that the Most Highs rule in the kingdoms of men. 5, the angels of the races. Those who work for the conservation of the evolutionary races of time, regardless of their political entanglements and religious groupings. On Urantia, there are remnants of 9 human races which have commingled and combined in the peoples of modern time. These Seraphim are closely associated with the ministry of the race commissioners, and the group now on Urantia is the original corps assigned to the planet soon after the day of Pentecost. 6, the angels of the future. These are the projection angels who forecast a future age and plan for the realization of the better things of new and advancing dispensation. They are the architects of the successive eras. The group now on the planet has thus functioned since the beginning of the current dispensation. 7, the angels of enlightenment. Urantia is now receiving the help of the 3rd corps of Seraphim, dedicated to the fostering of planetary education. These angels are occupied with mental and moral training as it concerns individuals, families, groups, schools, communities, nations, and whole races. 8, the angels of health. These are the seraphic ministers assigned to the assistance of those mortal agencies dedicated to the promotion of health and the prevention of disease. The present corps is the 6th group to serve during this dispensation. 9, the home Seraphim. Urantia now enjoys the services of the 5th group of angelic ministers dedicated to the preservation and advancement of the home, the basic institution of human civilization. 10, the angels of industry. This seraphic group is concerned with fostering industrial development and improving economic conditions among the Urantia peoples. This corps has had 7 changes since the bestowal of Michael. The 11, the angels of diversion. These are the Seraphim who foster the values of play, humor, and rest. They ever seek to uplift man's recreational diversions and thus to promote the most profitable utilization of human leisure. The present corps is the 3rd of that order to minister on Urantia. 12, the angels of superhuman ministry. These are the angels of the angels, those Seraphim who are assigned to the ministry of all other superhuman life on the planet, temporary or permanent. This corps has served since the beginning of the current dispensation. When these groups of Master Seraphim disagree in matters of planetary policy or procedure, their differences are usually composed by the Governor General, but all his rulings are subject to appeal in accordance with the nature and gravity of the issues involved in the disagreement. None of these angelic groups exercise direct or arbitrary control over the domains of their assignment. They cannot fully control the affairs of their respective realms of action, but they can and do so manipulate planetary conditions and so associate circumstances as favorably to influence the spheres of the human activity to which they are attached. The Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision utilize many agencies for the prosecution of their missions. They function as ideational clearinghouses, mind focalizers, and project promoters. While unable to inject new and higher concepts into human minds, they often act to intensify some higher ideal which has already appeared within a human intellect. But aside from these many means of positive action, the Master Seraphim ensure planetary progress against vital jeopardy through the mobilization, training, and maintenance of the Reserve Corps of Destiny. The chief function of these reservists is to ensure against breakdown of evolutionary progress. They are the provisions which the celestial forces have made against surprise. They are the guarantees against disaster. Thank you. Amen.
That was very nice, Cecilia. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know because we don't have a lot of time, and I'm sure I don't know who's coming next, but you know, this is a broad topic that we could discuss probably for a long time. But for those of you, well, maybe everyone might like to, on your own time, review the Reserve Corps of Destiny, the final part of this. And is there any discussion? And we have a few minutes left, 3 or 4 minutes.
Jeff Waddles raised his hand first.
Jeff.
I'd just like to observe that as governments deal with the coronavirus problem, they have to balance, for example, economic considerations as well as healthcare considerations. As we read section 2, Jay, in the paper that you so beautifully brought to us, it occurred to me the tremendous maturity and balance of the qualifications for being on that board of supervisors. And Luis earlier had warned us about panic and overreaction. I give thanks that our planetary government, with all these various corps of of ministry that Cecilia just read to us, you know, that these are properly weighted and interrelated in the ministry in which they are leading us. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, thank you, Jay. This has been great. It reminds me of a conference a few years ago where the organizers took time every day to just have a study group. People broke up into study groups and read the Urantia book. And it was wonderful. But in order to keep the schedule moving, this is your 5-minute break. Go get water, go to the bathroom, go stretch and grab some carrot sticks. You're welcome to continue discussing respectfully among yourselves during the break. But if you need a break, go take it. And in about 5 minutes or so, we will start with the next presentation. So thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. Thanks for putting this together.